Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 72 based on novel. So let's start. Astonishment filled Lindong's eyes as he gazed at the reincarnation seal on Enin's bright forehead in shock. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that this little girl whom he had known many years ago would actually be a reincarnator. What is it? Jiang Shui had also noticed the look in Lindong's eyes and immediately asked. Lindong reached out and gently rubbed Enin's little head as a pure and innocent smile appeared on the latter's little face. She clearly had a rather deep impression of Lindong and had still managed to recognize him even after so many years. Has she been like this all these years? Lindong asked. He had met Yin roughly 8 years ago. However, she already had the appearance of a 12-year-old little girl back then. Yet, after so many years had passed, this appearance of hers did not seem to have changed at all. Even the innocence in her eyes was exactly the same as it had been back then. Jiang Shui bitterly smiled as she nodded her head. She gazed at Jiang Yin and sighed, I do not know what is going on, but she has indeed never changed over the years. Moreover, I can faintly sense something extraordinary from her. Lindong smiled at Yin before letting her head to the mountain peak first to wait for them. Only then did he reply, Jiang Shui, she is a reincarnator. Reincarnator? Doesn't that mean that Yin will be taken over by another set of memories in future? Upon hearing this, the expression on Jiang Shui's pretty face changed a little. Evidently, she had heard of some rumors regarding the reincarnators. Lindong shook his head, this will depend on who her previous reincarnation was. Logically speaking, if it was a reincarnation stage expert that had failed the first or second reincarnation tribulation and entered the cycle of reincarnation, it was likely that the current reincarnation will be dominant. However, if it was a terrifying existence like the Ice Master, the main personality in charge of the body in future would truly be hard to determine. Do you know who her previous reincarnation is? Jiang Shui. Lindong shook his head again. Normally speaking, as long as one's Yuan spirit was not completely wiped out and had passed one reincarnation tribulation, one would be able to utilize the power of reincarnation to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Of course, even if one entered the cycle of reincarnation, there was still some risk of being destroyed. Hence, most pinnacle practitioners would not choose this path unless there was really no other option left. In ancient times, there were few pinnacle experts who had advanced to this level. Thus, even Lindong could not glean much information from just this reincarnation seal alone. However, if it was a reincarnation expert who had only passed 1 or 2 reincarnation tribulations, it would instead be a good thing for Yin. Lindong had now landed on the mountain peak. Subsequently, his gaze shifted towards the black figure wrapped in demonic qi. There was clearly a huge change in his appearance compared to back then. In the past, he only had a body of bones, but flesh had now grown on them. Although he was still thin, he had a human appearance. Moreover, what astonished Lindong the most was the countless remnant wills gathering within his eyes. However, no matter how messy and numerous those wills were, they all had one similarity. To protect. Over the years, the remnant wills drifting in this domain fused into his body. He has now become rather unique, no one knows exactly what he has become, Jiang Shui softly said. Lindong nodded his head slightly. Looks like the ability of the Great Desolate Sect to gather together was extremely strong. Even after thousands of years, the wills of these dead disciples still wanted to protect their sect. The protector before their eyes seemed to be the combined product of these wills. Lindong softly sighed in his heart. Such a feeling was similar to his time in Dao sect. It was likely that if Dao sect was destroyed, the will of countless Dao sect disciples wanting to protect the sect would remain in the land. Raw? At this moment, the black figure seemed to be in extreme pain. His fists heavily smashed onto his chests as he kneeled on the ground. However, those blank eyes that watched this domain were filled with extreme fondness. Hey, big guy, how are you doing? When Yin saw the extreme pain the black figure was in, she hastily asked. Light continuously drifted out from within her body before enveloping the black figure, unceasingly purifying the demonic qi in his body. Lindong's brows tightly knitted together as he watched the suffering protector. Soon after, he clenched his fist and endless lightning bolts suddenly emerged from his hand. The lightning was filled with extremely berserk and pure energy. The lightning gathered together to form a lightning ball which directly charged into the protector's body. Quickly, sparks cackled out from his body as the demonic qi was completely annihilated. As the demonic qi receded, the pain and blankness in the protector's eyes gradually vanished. Some chaotic semblance of a consciousness once again gathered in his eyes. In the end, he deeply bowed to Lindong. Lindong waved his sleeve, stopping the protector. Back then, I received your help in removing the curse from the Nirvana pills. This debt has now been repaid. Although the protector had some semblance of a conscience, it clearly did not amount to much. It was likely that he did not remember what he had done back then. After all, the he was now merely an accumulation of numerous wills. Unlike a human and yet not a corpse. Also a completely different state than the zombie old man Fen Tian. Lindong understood the protector's condition, hence, he did not elaborate any further. He merely turned his sinisterly cold gaze towards the land below, where strands of demonic qi were rising, as he icily chuckled. The richness of demonic qi in his body is not without origin. Relying on yin to suppress it is not a long-term plan. To remove weeds, one must destroy the roots. If we want to solve this problem, we will have to deal with the thing hidden under this land. This was where he had obtained the devouring ancestral symbol, and it was also the reason for his achievements till this day. Therefore, it could be said that he owed a great debt of gratitude to this great desolate sect. Now that he knew that even their long-dead wills were unable to rest in peace, a trace of cold anger rose within his heart. Protect Yin. Lindong said to Jiang Shui, and the latter nodded her head. She moved to Yinin's side and pulled her away. I'm interested to see exactly what is causing mischief here. Lindong coldly snorted as the thunder clouds in the sky rapidly gathered. Countless bolts of lightning flickered and covered the entire domain. Rumble. Countless lightning bolts maniacally poured downwards, falling onto the land below. Berserk and pure energy spread as the originally present demonic qi was swept away by the lightning at an astonishing speed. However, even after clearing the demonic qi, there seemed to be no response from the land below. Truly tenacious. Lindong sneered as his finger thrust forward. 100,000 feet large lightning dragon bared its fangs as it shot downwards, viciously blasting the land below. Bang! The entire domain seemed to tremble at this moment, and an incomparably enormous and deep chasm was torn open on the land. The depths of the chasm was dark without equal, and it appeared as if a matchless evil was surging within it. Lindong's expression was ice cold. He once again thrust his finger forward as countless thunderbolts turned, seemingly covering the sky as they bombarded the land. This time, there was finally some response from the depths of the land. Lindong watched as evil demonic qi that seemingly covered the sky gushed out from the depths of the land like a devil dragon. As the demonic qi spread, it completely blocked the incomparably berserk lightning. Finally unable to endure? Then come out. When Lindong saw that there was finally a response from the Yimo hiding within the darkness, lightning surfaced in his pupils. He lifted his hand as the thunder clouds in the sky frantically surged, while countless thunderbolts gathered within them. The thunder clouds slowly scattered, but the moment they scattered, a 10,000 feet large lightning sun was revealed. Terrifying lightning rippled as thunder rumbled and echoed into the distance, causing the entire domain to tremble slightly. Go? Lindong's eyes were indifferent. His finger shifted downwards as the lightning sun immediately descended and galloped towards the depths of the abyss. Lightning flickered wherever it passed and seemed to scorch even space itself. Humph! As the lightning sun crazily fell, a gloomy and cold to the extreme voice emerged from the depths of the abyss. Soon after, endless demonic qi gushed out, transforming into 100,000 feet large demonic qi-like disk. Boom! The lightning sun slammed into the demonic qi-like disk, and two frightening to the extreme energies exploded. The already enormous abyss was once again forcibly torn open as giant gorges covered the land like a spider web. Resplendent lightning frantically flickered. Crack! Cracks finally appeared on the demonic chi light disc, and with a final bang, it completely shattered. However, when the demonic chi light disc exploded, a gigantic devil hand extended from the abyss and blew away the lightning sun with a punch. Bang bang! Although the lightning sun had been scattered, berserk lightning energy caused the devil hand to be covered in cuts and bruises. The Thunderbolt ancestral symbol's power was wild and violent at its core and possessed an offensive power that was without equal. Since this fellow dared to face such a power head-on, he would naturally suffer. You've actually obtained the Thunderbolt ancestral symbol. Such a head-on clash caused a gloomy and cold voice to emerge from the bottom of the abyss. Soon after, torrential demonic chi surged out of the abyss as a figure slowly walked out from within. Lindong watched the swirling demonic chi as the figure became clearer and clearer. In the end, it finally walked out from the black mists. It wore a strange expression on its pale and handsome face while a cold chuckle rang out. The previous devouring ancestral symbol controller died at this king's hands. I never imagined that the current devouring ancestral symbol and Thunderbolt ancestral symbol controller will also die at this king's hands today. Looks like this king is truly the nemesis of people like you. With a calm expression on his face, Lindong stared at that devil figure, who was slowly walking out from within the demonic aura. However, when he sensed the frightening demonic aura surging from the latter's body, both his pupils hardened. May I know which seat king of the devil prison are you? Lindong asked in a faint voice. It was likely that only those 10 fellows were qualified to hold the title seat king in the devil prison. However, Lindong did not know the exact position held by the person standing in front of him. It seems like you have a pretty decent understanding of my devil prison. Over the years, they must have created a commotion in the outside world. Ha ha, by my estimates, it's about time. That devil figure was slightly shocked after he heard Lindong's words. Promptly, he continued, this king is ranked 9th in the devil prison. 9th seat king huh? Lindong did not reveal any surprise in his eyes. Although this person had a frightening demonic aura, at his peak, he was most likely as powerful as the 7th seat king. Moreover, from the looks of it, it seems like he had suffered extremely severe injuries and had yet to make a complete recovery. Therefore, based on Lindong's estimates, the strength of the current 9th seat king was barely comparable to an expert who had passed 2 reincarnation tribulations. Strictly speaking, he was inferior to the 7th seat king, whom Lindong had fought with before. You must be the one who led the invasion of the Great Desolate Sect back then, am I right? Upon hearing this, the 9th seat king smirked before he said, the Great Desolate Sect was indeed destroyed by me. Moreover, the previous owner of the devouring ancestral symbol was also killed by me. Roar! After he spoke, standing on the mountain peak, the protector suddenly released a stern cry. Immediately, wild and violent energy waves swept forward, before he actually charged directly towards the 9th seat king. Meanwhile, his roar contained hatred that was brewing for several millennia. When Jiang Shui saw this, she quickly circulated the Yuan power within her body and tried to stop him. After all, how could the latter possibly be a match for the 9th seat king with his current strength? It seems like I missed someone, however, it looks like he is currently suffering a fate worse than death. The 9th seat king glanced at the protector indifferently. Promptly, a vicious expression quickly rose within his eyes as he said, however, your Great Desolate Sect was indeed quite capable. Although your sect was ultimately destroyed by this king, your sect killed all my subordinates and that old bastard even risked his life and sealed me beneath the ground. Lindong chuckled and said, it seems like you gradually broke free of that seal. Moreover, you allowed the demonic aura to seep out in order to alert the devil prison, and tell them your exact whereabouts, am I right? The 9th seat king's pupils shrunk. Promptly, he chuckled nonchalantly. Unfortunately, you are one unlucky fellow. A tinge of ridicule flashed across Lindong's eyes. It was likely that the 9th seat king never thought that his demonic aura would be completely purified by Yin even before they could escape. Furthermore, she had now entered this realm and suppressed the demonic aura within, preventing him from making a complete recovery. That damned girl. A brutal expression suddenly emerged within the 9th seat king's eyes. Then he glared menacingly at that little girl, who was standing on the mountain peak. His vicious expression gave her a fright, as she immediately hid behind Jiang Shui. Then she only exposed one large black eye, before she secretly peeked at the ninth Seat King. From the looks of it, you have yet to recover from your injuries. This looks like a good opportunity for me. Lindong looked at the ninth Seat King with a smile. Meanwhile, rich killing desire was flowing with his dark black eyes. After all, he clearly knew how powerful the devil prison was, and these Seat Kings all possessed frightening strength. With his current strength, it would be extremely troublesome if he met any of the Seat Kings. However, the ninth Seat King was an exception. He had been sealed for thousands of years by the previous owner of the devouring ancestral symbol, and had yet to fully recover his strength. Therefore, if Lindong could finish off the ninth Seat King today, it would be quite a heavy blow to the devil prison. You want to kill this king? I'm afraid that you aren't qualified. The ninth Seat King laughed out loud in a stern voice. Although he had detected the two ancestral symbols within Lindong's body, the latter had yet to advance to the reincarnation stage. Moreover, even though the ninth Seat King had not made a complete recovery, even an expert who had passed one reincarnation tribulation could not hope to defeat him. Hence, even less needed to be said about Lindong. Lindong remained emotionless. Meanwhile, monstrous Yuan power filled with rich killing intent swept forward. After all, he knew the status that a Seat King held in the devil prison. If the ninth Seat King was allowed to escape, he would undoubtedly become a serious threat in the future. Therefore, regardless of what happens, Lindong must kill him today. Bang! However, while killing intent was flowing within Lindong's eyes, killing intent had also erupted within the ninth Seat King's eyes. Then, he suddenly stomped his foot before demonic aura began to charge out from beneath the ground. Finally, countless devil corpses climbed out from beneath the ground before they charged towards Lindong ruthlessly. You are the almighty ninth Seat King of the devil prison. Why are you using your subordinates as cannon fodder? Lindong chuckled when he saw this. Then, he clenched his hand before a 10,000 feet large black hole appeared. After which, devouring power surged and completely devoured those devil corpses. Bang! The ninth Seat King smirked. Then, he clenched his hand before the countless devil corpses actually piled together. Finally, their bodies were eroded before they turned into a huge black bone sword. Meanwhile, evil demonic aura continuously surged from it. The ninth Seat King was holding that black bone sword in his hand. Then, his body moved before he appeared above Lindong in a phantom-like fashion. After which, his bone sword was accompanied by evil demonic aura as it penetrated through space and ruthlessly pierced towards the top of Lindong's head. However, just as the bone sword was about to hit Lindong, a thunderbolt suddenly came crashing downward. Finally, it slammed heavily against that bone sword. Immediately, sparks flew before the surrounding space became distorted. Devil Corpse lightning. When the ninth Seat King saw that his attack was blocked, he did not panic. Instead, he chuckled, before the bone sword in his hand immediately blew apart and turned into dozens of black lightning glows. Finally, they charged crazily towards Lindong. Those lightning glows were filled with endless evil, and there was even a disgusting stench being emitted from them. In fact, it was likely that even a reincarnation stage expert would be eroded and seriously injured if he made contact with them. Scram! However, up against those evil lightning glows, Lindong was not fearful at all. He clenched his hand before an ancient thunderbolt-shaped symbol slowly appeared on his palm. After which, he threw a punch forward and directly smashed those devilic lightning glows. Bang bang bang. Pure and vigorous thunderbolt force raged before they went on a rampage. It turns out that they did not fear those evil devilic lightning glows at all. Everywhere those thunderbolt force spread, those devilic lightning glows were just like snow that was exposed to the hot sun, as they disappeared completely. Meanwhile, the ninth Seat King's eyes sunk slightly, after he saw that his devilic lightning glows were completely ineffective. After all, Lindong had two ancestral symbols, and the power of those symbols were extremely effective against his demonic aura. Lindong completely ignored him. He braced his attention before his entire arm once again turned into liquid form. Following which, he quickly gathered the strength of his two great ancestral symbols. Bang! His arm, which looked as though there were countless ancient symbols floating within, whisked forward before it ruthlessly smashed towards the ninth seat king. The ninth seat king's expression changed gently when he saw Lindong's liquidized arm. After which, his hand seal quickly changed, before demonic light began to gather on his body. Subsequently, a fearsome-looking devil armor revealed itself. Boom! Lindong's palm attack, which contained the strength of two great ancestral symbols, smashed heavily against the devil armor of the ninth seat king. Immediately, a low and deep sound appeared. However, that powerful attack, which could instantly kill a Yimo king, merely left a faint scratch on that devil armor. Devil Emperor armor. When Lindong felt the resistive force being reflected through his arm and saw that familiar-looking fearsome armor on the body of the ninth seat king, he chuckled. It seems like you are quite a knowledgeable brat. The ninth seat king laughed coldly. Lindong frowned. He had already experienced firsthand how powerful the Devil Emperor armor was after he fought with the seventh seat king. After all, that item was gifted to them by the Yimo Emperor. Moreover, the reason why those guys were so hard to kill was because they were protected by this item. With the Devil Emperor armor protecting him, the ninth seat king's eyes once again turned brutal. Following which, with a monstrous amount of demonic aura on his hand, he charged ruthlessly towards Lindong. At this moment, the latter had also completely unleashed his mental energy and his Yuan power. Together with the strength of his two great ancestral symbols, it turns out that the ninth seat king was actually unable to obtain the upper hand. Typically speaking, Lindong could at most match up to an expert who had passed one reincarnation tribulation. However, if he met someone like the seventh seat king, who had passed two reincarnation tribulations and possessed the Devil Emperor armor, he would definitely wound up in a disadvantage. However, the ninth seat king in front of him had yet to recover from his injuries. Moreover, his actual strength was lacking compared to the seventh seat king. This was the reason why Lindong was able to fight equally with him. Two glowing figures whistled across the sky. Each time they clashed, the surrounding space would become horribly distorted. Meanwhile, monstrous demonic aura and Yuan power clashed, and it was a frightening sight to behold. Jiang Shui was staring solemnly at the fight in the sky, while she secretly rejoiced. Thankfully, Lindong had arrived in time. Otherwise, who could have stopped the ninth seat king? Ha ha, little fellow, I will admit that you are quite powerful. However, you are ultimately unable to hurt me. Therefore, what can you do if I drag it on like this? From the way I see it, you should let me leave first and keep the peace here. We can settle this grudge in the future. What do you say? The ninth seat king clashed with Lindong once again. However, when he realized that he could not obtain the upper hand, he rotated his eyes and laughed out loud. Do you really think that I will do something as stupid as letting a potential threat go? Lindong chuckled. If he allowed the ninth seat king to escape, the latter would definitely become a great threat in the future. All right then. Let's see who can last till the end. A ferocious expression flashed across the eyes of the ninth seat king before he laughed. Lindong was standing in the sky. Meanwhile, his eyes were icy cold as he stared at the ninth seat king. At the same time, there was also a maniacal glint glimmering within his eyes. With his current strength, the only way for him to seriously injure the ninth seat king would be to use the lightning bow and black arrow. However, that attack took a heavy toll on him. Therefore, if that attack failed to kill the ninth seat king, he would be in for a headache. I can't care about this now. Lindong was a decisive man. Furthermore, he had the confidence that after he unleashed that attack, even if he could not kill the ninth seat king, he would be able to seriously injure the latter. At that time, he could simply use some other techniques to suppress the latter. A thought passed through Lindong's mind. Without further ado, he clenched his hand before a lightning bow appeared. Then, his fingers drew back the bowstring while a black arrow quietly formed. The only thing he could see now was the ninth seat king. Meanwhile, killing intent surged deep within his eyes. He must kill that devil today. Monstrous killing desire spread from within his body. He had made up his mind and nothing could change it. When Lindong's killing desire soared to its peak, the protector standing on the mountain peak seemed to have realized it as well. Immediately, a roar sounded. Moreover, that roar seemed to be filled with endless gratitude. After he roared, countless lights suddenly erupted from within the protector's body. After which, those lights floated in the sky. When Lindong's eyes swept across them, his pupils shrunk gently. There was an elderly figure within the light right at the front. Meanwhile, that elderly man was wearing black robes and his eyes were as dark as ink. He was in fact that black-eyed elder, who passed him the devouring ancestral symbol back then. Lindong was a little startled as he looked at that black-eyed elder within the light. He naturally recognized the latter. Back then, he obtained the devouring ancestral symbol from the latter. Moreover, that elder was the previous owner of the devouring ancestral symbol. Elder? Lindong surveyed his surroundings. Promptly, he saw that there was a figure seated within each of the countless lights that were surrounding him. Then, he came to a sudden realization. These were the wills left behind by numerous great desolate sect experts. Moreover, even though they had died and disappeared, they still stubbornly wished to protect their sect. You stupid old ghost! When the ninth Seat King saw this scene, his expression changed immediately. Then, he stared viciously at that black-eyed elder before he said, "You sealed me for a few millennia. However, did you think that you could kill me just like that? Ha ha, I am still alive even after a few millennia. However, you have already turned into dust. Who do you think has won?" The black-eyed elder looked at the ninth Seat King, who was laughing hysterically, before a faint smile appeared on his face. After which, he stood up before he slowly bowed towards Lindong. Immediately, the countless light figures beside him also bowed together. "We are all willing to help you to slay that devil." An ancient voice spread across the sky. Subsequently, 100,000 feet wide light glow erupted from within their bodies. Amidst that light glow, which permeated the sky, was an extremely powerful reincarnation ripple. Meanwhile, there was light flowing within Lindong's pitch-black eyes, and that black arrow was also trembling gently. As that dense reincarnation ripple spread, a resplendent glow actually began to spread across the body of the arrow. A frightening fluctuation, which could not be described with words, slowly spread at this moment. In fact, the entire place began to shake violently. When he saw the changes occurring to his black arrow, Lindong's expression changed as well. This was because he realized that countless experts from the Great Desolate Sect had bestowed their final will onto his black arrow. Moreover, their wills were extremely pure and they simply wanted to destroy the ninth Seat King, who had destroyed their sect. I never expected their wills to be so powerful even after a few millennia. Lindong sighed softly. Meanwhile, an icy cold glint slowly gathered within his dark black eyes. Finally, the black arrow in his hand locked onto that ninth Seat King, whose expression was slowly changing. "Elder, back then, you passed me your ancestral symbol and I am indebted to you. Today, in return, I shall avenge your great desolate sect." Lindong's expression became increasingly cold and stern. Then, the space behind him subsequently fluctuated before a mysterious force tore through space and arrived. Finally, it covered the entire black arrow. Immediately, that chaotic color caused the reincarnation ripple on that black arrow to slowly withdraw. It was an ordinary-looking black arrow. However, when the ninth Seat King realized that he was being locked on by that black arrow, his body gently trembled. Meanwhile, rarely seen horror surged within his black eyes. At this moment, he had detected the genuine scent of death. That rich scent of death was something that he had never detected, even when he was up against that black-eyed elder's dying counterattack. "Brat, do you really wish to fight to the death with me? Why don't we both take a step back?" The ninth Seat King let out a stern cry. Lindong stared at him indifferently. After which, his lips moved before one icy cold word clearly sounded, "Fool." The ninth Seat King was stunned. However, his expression quickly turned menacing, before he said, "Brat, you would rather choose the difficult path than the easy way out. Do you really think that you can kill me like this? You truly don't know your limits." After his stern cry sounded, monstrous demonic aura swept out from within his body. Following which, the Devil Emperor armor on his body began to shake violently, before many strange symbols appeared on his Devil Emperor armor. Meanwhile, the body of the Ninth Seat King also began to swell. In a couple of breaths, he had transformed into a giant devil. Moreover, his demonic aura permeated the sky and blotted out the sun. Lindong stared at the Ninth Seat King, who had pushed his demonic aura to the limits, before the sharp glint in his eyes intensified. His fingers, which were grasping the bowstring tightly, began to tremble gently. Meanwhile, traces of blood seeped out and dripped along the bow. At this moment, the space in front of the arrow also began to gradually collapse. Although Lindong had not fired that arrow, it seemed as though the entire place was unable to withstand its frightening pressure. "Go?" Lindong muttered within his heart. Soon after, his fingers, which were hooked tightly on the bowstring, were finally released together with a trace of blood. An incomparably sharp sound resounded across the sky, as that black arrow tore through the empty space like a black dragon. Within the same breath, it was already in front of the Ninth Seat King. Roar! A low roar erupted from the Ninth Seat King's throat. Following which, powerful demonic auras surged before they turned into several fearsome-looking devil gates in front of him. Bang bang bang. However, that mighty defense was easily destroyed by that black ray of light. Within a couple of breaths, the monstrous demonic aura had collapsed. After which, even before the Ninth Seat King could make another move, that black arrow had ruthlessly struck his body in front of his narrowed eyes. Faintly, it seemed as though a metallic sound was emitted. Following which, many cracked lines appeared on his Devil Emperor armor. Finally, that black arrow mercilessly penetrated his Devil Emperor armor before it pierced the body of the Ninth Seat King. Bang! The Ninth Seat King flew 10,000 feet backwards. Meanwhile, the Devil Emperor armor on his body cracked continuously, while sharp and miserable cries of disbelief erupted from his mouth. The Ninth Seat King eventually crashed onto the ground. Meanwhile, his body was drenched with black blood. Then, he slowly lowered his head and looked at his shattered Devil Emperor armor. Meanwhile, there was still a look of disbelief on his face. In the past, that black-eyed elder threw everything that he had, but he failed to break this armor. However, as of now, it was broken by a single arrow from Lindong. His Devil Emperor armor, which was bestowed by their noble emperor, was actually broken. How is this possible? The Ninth Seat King muttered to himself. In the next moment, his eyes became brutal. However, he had only just moved his body, before he subsequently emitted a sharp miserable screech. Immediately, one saw countless rays of light erupting from within his body. Bang bang bang. After those lights erupted, a thunderbolt was seemingly about to explode within the Ninth Seat King's body. However, even before that thunderous noise sounded, his expression became increasingly pale while his aura weakened rapidly. Boom! After that intense explosion, the body of the Ninth Seat King was actually forcefully blown apart. Currently, devil blood was splattered all over the ground, causing the ground to become sticky and disgusting. Devil blood covered the ground. Meanwhile, it was vaguely possible to spot a demonic light attempting to tunnel into the ground. Like I said, I must kill you today. Lindong's indifferent voice sounded at this moment. Then, he waved his hand before a warm white glow suddenly erupted. Then, it transformed into a light barrier and enveloped that weak black light. After that black light was enveloped by that white glow, white fog instantly rose from within that black light. Then, a sharp miserable screech quickly followed. That white glow slowly shrunk. Then, it was possible to see a palm-sized devil figure floating within. It was the Ninth Seat King. However, the latter no longer looked as domineering and fearsome as before. Lindong stared at the Ninth Seat King, who was being wrapped within that white light, before he involuntarily sighed. The life force of these Yimo were truly extraordinary. In fact, the latter was still able to survive even after that extremely frightening attack. Furthermore, even though the latter was severely wounded and even his devil body was destroyed, if he escaped, it was likely that he would gradually recover in 100 years. It's no wonder even the 8 ancient masters rarely killed any of these elite devil prison members. This was because all these Yimo were like stubborn cockroaches. As of now, the ninth Seat King had finally fallen into his hands only because he used the wills left behind by countless experts from the Great Desolate Sect. By finishing you off here, it's likely that it will reduce our burden during the next Great World War. Lindong smiled faintly towards the ninth Seat King, who was wrapped within that white light. Next, he extended his hand. Finally, the Thunderbolt ancestral symbol and devouring ancestral symbol surfaced on his palm. The two great ancestral symbols stood on his left and right, and coincidentally sandwiched the ninth Seat King. It's not enough. Lindong mused for a moment after he saw this lineup. After which, he summoned the Great Desolate Tablet. Then, it floated above the ninth Seat King. Soon after, he took out the mysterious Divine Palace and placed it below him. You! When the ninth Seat King saw this scene, his expression finally changed drastically. These four great divine objects were extremely effective against the Yimo. Therefore, even though he had a sturdy life force, he still felt extremely uneasy at this moment. However, Lindong completely ignored him. Instead, he once again clenched his hand before the Ancestor Stone appeared. Finally, it shot into that white light. The five great divine objects emitted a faint glow. After which, they gradually connected with each other, before that white light began to shrink slowly. No! That white light became increasingly small. Meanwhile, the ninth Seat King sandwiched within also became increasingly tiny. At the same time, his sharp and miserable screeches sounded continuously. Since he was being purified by these five great divine objects, he would definitely die despite his monstrous strength. Nevertheless, Lindong ignored the ninth Seat King's miserable cries. Gently shutting his eyes, that white light finally shrunk to the size of a grain of rice. After which, it blew apart with a loud bang. A ripple, which could not be described with words, spread. Meanwhile, 1,000 feet large waves were stirred on the ground below and it was a complete wreckage. At this moment, Lindong finally opened his eyes. As he looked at that scattering white light, a smile of relief appeared on his pale face. He had finally killed the ninth Seat King of the Devil Prison. That was quite the challenge. Lindong swung his sleeve, before he kept the five great divine objects back into his body. The elites of the Devil Prison were indeed extremely frightening. Despite being forced into such a state, he still had to exhaust a huge amount of energy in order to completely eliminate them. Elder, that devil has been slayed and your wish should be fulfilled. Lindong lifted his head and looked at the glowing figures floating in the sky. Subsequently, he looked at the black-eyed elder before he softly said. Every figure hovering in the sky gave Lindong a deep bow. Meanwhile, a pleased expression seemingly appeared on that black-eyed elder's face. Thank you very much, young friend. I have no means of repaying this huge favor of yours. All I can do is to express my sincere gratitude. Hovering in the sky, the bodies of the black-eyed elder and the rest gradually began to dissipate. Suddenly, some mysterious spots of light were formed. Then, those spots of light subsequently drifted towards Lindong. Lindong extended his hand and gently touched those spots of light. Immediately, his body trembled gently, before joy surged within his eyes. Were these reincarnation essences? This video will end here.